My parents threw me out at 19. They had no idea I just walked into their courtroom as a lawyer. My mother whispered it before we even cleared the courthouse doors. "Stay quiet. Let the real lawyers handle this." She didn't look at me when she said it. She was scanning the lobby the way she always scanned rooms, measuring, categorizing, deciding who mattered and who didn't. She had done this my entire childhood, and I had spent most of my childhood landing in the second category. She still hadn't recognized me. That would change in approximately 90 seconds. My name is Anna Thompson. I am 31 years old. I am a licensed attorney in the state of Nebraska, admitted to the bar 2 years ago, and I have never lost a tenant rights case. I walked into the Douglas County Courthouse that Tuesday morning in a charcoal blazer, my hair pinned back, my briefcase in my right hand, and 12 years of everything my parents had called impossible folded quietly inside my chest. My mother was 3 feet to my left. She was wearing a cream blouse and the pearl earrings she saves for events she considers important. My father walked behind her in a navy suit that cost more than my first month's rent in the room I rented above a laundromat during my second year of undergrad. They looked like the kind of people who always win. They had no idea I was about to introduce them to a different kind of day. I need to back up, because this story only makes sense if you understand what they threw away. I grew up in a 4-bedroom house in Omaha's Oxarben neighborhood. Nice streets, good schools, the kind of block where people take the trash cans in before sunset because appearance is a form of morality. My father, Richard Thompson, owned a small residential property management company, 6 buildings, 42 units, a rental income that kept us comfortable and kept him feeling like a man who had built something from nothing, which he reminded us of frequently. My mother, Diane, did not work outside the house. She organized charity luncheons, managed the social calendar, and maintained what she called standards, with the intensity of someone who understood that standards, once relaxed, let everything in. I was their eldest. My brother Derek was 2 years younger, blonde, athletic, and understood by the family to be the one with potential. I was, and I'm using their word here, difficult. I asked too many questions. I argued with teachers my parents had already decided were correct. I read too much, cared too loudly about the wrong things, and failed consistently to perform the version of femininity my mother had decided was appropriate for a daughter of the Thompson household. The specific argument that ended my time in their house happened on a Saturday in October of 2012. I was 19. I was home from community college for the weekend, which I had been attending on a partial scholarship while working 15 hours a week at a coffee shop. I had told my parents I wanted to transfer to a 4-year university and eventually attend law school. My father looked at me across the kitchen table and laughed, not cruelly, just simply, the way you laugh at something that has no bearing on reality. "Law school," he said. "Law school," I confirmed. He told me I was chasing fantasies that cost other people money. My mother said I had been difficult since birth and that she was tired of subsidizing my self-importance. Derek sat at the end of the table eating cereal and looking at his phone. By Sunday evening, my clothes were in 2 black garbage bags on the front porch. My mother handed me $40 in cash. My father did not come to the door. I stood on that porch in October air with 2 bags and $40 and a very specific feeling in my sternum. Not grief, not shock, but something that hardened slowly and completely, the way water becomes ice. There is no drama in this part. I did not scream. I did not beg. I picked up the bags and I started walking. That feeling never fully left me. I learned to use it. I will not collapse 12 years into a paragraph, because the 12 years deserve more than that, but here is the shape of them. My friend Kelsey Hartman let me sleep on her couch for 6 weeks. She was 20, worked at a coffee shop, and split her groceries with me without making it feel like charity. I have loved her for that in the particular way you love someone who helped you survive something. I kept my scholarship. I picked up more hours at the coffee shop. I filed my own FAFSA, correctly for the first time now that my parents' income was no longer on it, and qualified for federal aid that covered the gap. I transferred to the University of Nebraska, Omaha in January of 2013. I worked 25 hours a week and graduated in 2016 with a degree in political science and a 3.81 GPA, which I am still quietly proud of because I earned it in a room above a laundromat where the dryers ran until midnight and I did homework with earplugs in. I applied to Creighton University School of Law on a Tuesday night in my apartment at my desk with the lamp I bought at a garage sale for $3. I got in. Law school was 3 years of controlled terror. The first semester I studied 11 hours a day and still felt behind. My property law professor, Dr. Gerald Maines, a bald, meticulous man who had argued before the Nebraska Supreme Court, told me in October of my first year that I wrote the clearest issue-spotting memo he had received from a first-year student in 5 years. I sat in his office and received that compliment with a stillness that surprised him, I think. He didn't know that I had been waiting a long time for someone with credentials to confirm that I was, in fact, not the problem. I graduated in 2019. I passed the Nebraska State Bar exam on my first attempt, with a score that placed me in the 83rd percentile. I joined a small civil rights and housing firm called Everett & Cho in downtown Omaha. My supervising attorney was Patricia Cho, JD, 15 years in housing litigation, the kind of attorney who could cross-examine a city inspector and make him grateful for the experience. She mentored me with the directness of someone who had no time for softness and no tolerance for mediocrity, which suited me exactly. In my first 18 months, I took 11 tenant cases. I won 9. 1 settled favorably, 1 I lost on a procedural technicality that still bothers me. In 2022, I argued Riverside Properties v. Delgado, a landlord-tenant habitability case involving a single mother of 3, a building with failing heat and documented lead paint, and a property management company whose attorney arrived to court with the confidence of a man who had never considered the possibility of losing. The judge ruled fully for my client. The tenants received complete repair orders, 18 months of rent reimbursement, and damages. The case was referenced in a Nebraska Legal Journal article about habitability enforcement the following spring. Judge Holbrook presided. I will get to her. I found out about my parents' eviction case through Claire Oates herself. Claire came to our office on a Wednesday afternoon in March. She was 34, quiet in the way of someone who has been managing her own fear for a while, and she sat in the chair across from my desk with her hands folded and explained her situation in precise, organized sentences that told me she had been rehearsing this conversation. She had rented a 2-bedroom unit from Thompson Property Management for 2.5 years. 6 months ago, she had noticed a black discoloration along the baseboard in her daughter Maya's bedroom. She photographed it. She submitted a maintenance request through the tenant portal. No response in 2 weeks. She submitted a second. No response. She began keeping a log, dates, request numbers, timestamps, with the systematic instinct of a woman who works in medical billing and understands documentation. By the time she submitted her 7th maintenance request, Maya had developed a persistent cough and was being seen by a pediatric pulmonologist. Her name was Dr. Sarah Kwan, MD, at Children's Hospital and Medical Center, Omaha. Dr. Kwan documented in her clinical notes, which Claire had brought in a manila folder, organized by date, that Maya presented with symptoms consistent with mold-related respiratory irritation. The notes explicitly referenced the home environment as a contributing factor. Claire had a city inspector visit the unit in January after she found the number for the housing complaint line through a community legal aid wire. The inspector was a man named Doug Ferris, Housing Standards Division, 17 years with Douglas County. His report, which Claire also had in the folder, was 14 pages. He cited the unit for 3 code violations, including the presence of Stachybotrys chartarum, black mold, in Maya's bedroom and an adjacent closet. He noted the ceiling above the bedroom showed evidence of ongoing moisture intrusion from a roof drainage issue that had gone unaddressed. His recommendation was that the unit be vacated pending remediation. Claire had stopped paying rent after receiving that report. Thompson Property Management had filed for eviction the following week. I looked at the folder in front of me. 11 maintenance requests, medical records, city inspector report, photographs, 37 of them, time-stamped, clear, damning. Do you know the name of the property owner? I asked. She checked her lease. Richard and Diane Thompson, she said. The company name is Thompson Property Management. I put my pen down. Claire looked at me. Is something wrong? No, I said. I'm going to take your case. I did not tell her who the Thompsons were to me. That felt like information that belonged to me, not to her. She needed an attorney who came in. Everything else was my business. That night, I sat at my desk for a while in the quiet of the office after everyone else had gone home. I thought about the October porch, the 2 garbage bags, the $40. Then I pulled up the county court docket, found the case number, and began preparing. I want to be precise about the preparation because it matters. Patricia Cho reviewed my file on the Friday before trial. She is the kind of attorney who reads everything twice and asks the question you hoped she wouldn't. She read all 37 photographs. She read the inspector's report twice, flagging 3 paragraphs. She read Dr. Kwan's clinical notes with her glasses pushed up, which is what she does when something is good. This is a strong file, she said. Nebraska Revised Statute 76-1431, I said. Implied warranty of habitability. They knew about the mold, failed to remediate, and moved to evict after she exercised her legal right to withhold rent. Patricia nodded. You know it's going to be Gerald Marsh, right? He reps most of the mid-sized landlords in this county. Gerald Marsh, S.K. I had been in civil practice for 22 years. He had an office on Farnham Street and a reputation for aggressive pre-trial positioning and very expensive suits. He was the kind of opposing counsel who shook your hand with slightly too much pressure to make a point. I know Gerald, I said. He's going to try to discredit the inspector's report. Timeline disputes. I have the submission timestamps from the tenant portal, I said. Server logged. Not editable. Patricia took her glasses off. Who is the judge? Holbrook. She smiled, which she doesn't do easily. Good. The morning of trial, I woke at 5:30 a.m. I made coffee. I reviewed my opening. I checked the exhibit list for the 4th time. My hands were steady. I have learned over years of this work to locate the place inside me where everything goes quiet and operational. It is the same place that got me to the end of that October street with 2 garbage bags. I know how to find it. I arrived at the courthouse at 8:15 a.m. I cleared security. I walked through the lobby toward courtroom 4B, and that is when I saw them, my parents. My father had not changed much. Broader through the shoulders, gray at the temples, the slight redness in his face that had been there since his 50s. My mother was the same, the pearls, the posture, the careful neutrality of a woman who considers composure a public obligation. They were walking in from the side entrance, slightly ahead of me, talking to Gerald Marsh, who had his phone out and was saying something about discovery that I caught the tail end of. They had not looked behind them. I kept walking. Claire was already in the courtroom, sitting at the defendant's table with her hands flat on the surface in front of her, the way people people sit when they are trying not to let the room see that they're frightened. She was wearing a gray blazer she had clearly bought recently, tags off, with the particular care of someone dressing for something that matters. I set my briefcase down next to her. "I'm your attorney," I said. She looked at me. "You came." I said I would. Behind me, I heard the specific sound of my mother's pearls, a slight rattle of movement, and then her voice, low and sharp. "You're not a lawyer." I turned. She was staring at me with the expression of someone who has just seen something that should not exist. My father was beside her, his face going through recognition in visible stages, confusion, identification, and then a particular color rising from his collar. I reached into my briefcase, took out my bar card, and held it up. I graduated from UNO in 2016, Creighton Law in 2019, passed the bar on my first attempt. I lowered the card, without a single dollar from either of you. My father's voice dropped into the register he used when he was most dangerous. "You were a homeless bum we threw out for being a waste of..." "Richard." Gerald put a hand on his arm because Gerald understood that his clients were about to make his morning significantly harder. "Yes," I said to my father, answering the thing he hadn't finished. "I was homeless. You did that." And I kept going anyway. The door at the front of the courtroom opened. "All rise," the clerk said. "The Honorable Judge Patricia Holbrook presiding." Everyone shut up. Judge Patricia Holbrook had been on the Douglas County bench for 11 years. She was 58, precise, and possessed of a particular quality that I have only encountered in a handful of judges: the ability to make the room understand, through posture alone, that she has already read everything and will not be impressed by performance. She settled at the bench, reviewed the docket sheet, and then looked up directly at me. "Counsel, approach." I walked to the bench. Gerald came from the other side. The judge looked at me over her reading glasses. "Anna Thompson, you argued Riverside last year." "Yes, Your Honor. Full judgment for the tenants." "That's correct." She glanced past me to where my parents sat. Something moved in her expression. Not unprofessional, not dramatic, but present. She had been doing this long enough to recognize a story when it walked into her courtroom. "Let's proceed," she said. Gerald opened with a structure I recognized because I had anticipated it exactly. He painted Claire as a tenant who had been given a quality unit, maintained a difficult relationship with management, and manufactured a habitability grievance as legal cover for non-payment. He showed photographs of the apartment from the move-in inspection. Clean, fresh, irrelevant to what the unit looked like 18 months later. He spoke about my parents with the respectful gravity of a man describing pillars of the community, which, in Douglas County rental circles, they largely were. He was good. I'll give him that. When my turn came, I did not rush. I moved to admit Exhibits A through K. Exhibit A, the maintenance request log, 37 pages, server timestamped, showing 11 unresolved requests submitted between August and December. Exhibit B, the city inspector's report from January, 14 pages, citing 3 code violations including Stachybotrys chartarum, which I pronounced clearly and let sit in the air for a moment. Exhibit C through J, the photographs, printed 8/10, placed on the evidence cart in chronological sequence, showing the mold progression from visible corner growth to a spread covering approximately 60% of the bedroom's north wall and ceiling. Exhibit K, Dr. Sarah Kwan's clinical records from Children's Hospital, documenting Maya's respiratory presentation and the attending physician's written notation, linking the child's symptoms to the home environment. The room was very quiet. "Your Honor," I said, "Nebraska Revised Statute 761431 establishes an implied warranty of habitability. Landlords in this state are legally obligated to maintain rental properties in a condition fit for human habitation. When they materially breach that warranty and fail to remediate after proper notice, tenants have the right under 761428 to withhold rent until the breach is cured." I turned to face my parents for just a moment, not for effect, because I wanted them to be looking at me when I said the next part. The plaintiffs in this matter received 11 documented maintenance requests. They acknowledged the moisture issue in a written response dated September 14th, which is Exhibit L, Your Honor, and took no remediation action. They did not hire a contractor. They did not commission a mold assessment. They did not vacate the unit as the city inspector subsequently recommended. What they did do, 12 days after my client received that city inspector's report, was file this eviction. I set down my folder. This is not a case about a difficult tenant. This is a case about a child who developed a respiratory condition because the adults responsible for her home decided that remediation was inconvenient, and then attempted to use the court system to punish her mother for noticing. The judge let the silence stand for 3 full seconds. Then she turned to Gerald. "Did your clients know about the mold?" Gerald shuffled papers in the way of a man buying time. "They were aware of some moisture." "Did they know about the mold?" The shuffle stopped. "Yes, Your Honor. The city inspector's report," the judge said, holding it up, "indicates this unit should have been vacated for remediation 4 months ago." My mother opened her mouth. My father put his hand on her arm. Too late for that. The room had already decided. Judge Holbrook did not hesitate. "Eviction dismissed." Her voice was level and final. "Plaintiffs are ordered to complete all required repairs within 30 days to full code compliance as verified by reinspection from the Housing Standards Division. Plaintiffs will reimburse 3 months of withheld rent in the amount of $4,200 and will cover all documented medical expenses related to the minor child's respiratory treatment to be submitted within 15 days. She looked at my parents one last time. I will note for the record that this court does not look favorably on eviction proceedings used as retaliation for the exercise of statutory tenant rights. If those repairs are not completed to code within 30 days, I will refer this matter for further action, which may include civil penalties and a review of the plaintiff's property management license. The gavel came down. Claire made a sound beside me. Not a word, not a sentence, just a sound. The kind that comes out when you've been holding something very heavy for a very long time, and someone lifts it. She turned to me and grabbed my hand with both of hers. Her hands were shaking. Mine were not. Thank you, she said. My daughter is going to be fine, I said. Go home and document everything during those 30 days. If they drag on the repairs, you call me immediately. She nodded. She was crying. I let her. Some moments require that. I was in the hallway outside courtroom 4B, briefcase in hand, when my mother found me. The marble in that hallway is a pale gray-veined white. I know exactly what my heels sound like on it because I had walked out of that building after 3 previous cases, and the sound had always felt correct, like something arriving where it was supposed to be. It sounded like that now. How dare you? My mother said behind me. I stopped, turned. She was standing 8 feet away with the expression she used when she felt that something belonging to her had been handled by someone else. My father was behind her, slightly off to her left, jaw set. I did my job, I said. You call humiliating your own family your job. I looked at her, not with the 12 years ago version of this look, the one that still wanted something from her, just clearly. The way you look at something you have finally finished measuring. You stopped being my family, I said. The night you put 2 garbage bags on the porch and gave me $40. We gave you everything, my father said. We raised you. That house, I said, taught me that I would have to build everything myself, and I did. I paused. I'm actually grateful for the lesson. Gerald Marsh materialized behind them with the pained expression of an attorney whose clients were continuing to create liability in a public hallway. Richard, Diane, I strongly suggest we continue this conversation in private. I did not wait for a response. I turned and walked toward the exit, the heels on the marble, the gray-veined white of it, and behind me I heard my father say something in a low voice and my mother respond with something sharper, and then Gerald's murmur cutting over both of them with the diplomacy of a man who charges $500 an hour for exactly this service. I pushed through the courthouse doors into March air. I stood on the top step and exhaled. Done. Except I was not done. My phone rang before I reached the bottom step. Unknown number. Columbus area code. I almost didn't answer. I was operating on trial adrenaline and the particular emotional exhaustion of performing competence in front of people who once told you competence wasn't yours to claim. I wanted to sit in my car for a minute. I answered anyway. Anna Thompson? A man's voice. Older. Measured. The cadence of someone accustomed to delivering precise information. Yes. My name is Henry Bradford. I'm an attorney in Columbus, Ohio. I was your maternal grandfather's counsel for 31 years. I stopped walking. My grandfather, Robert Calloway, had died when I was 16. He had been a quiet, self-contained man, a civil engineer who read history books and made very good biscuits and always looked at me when I was talking, which in my household was rarer than it sounds. He had died of a cardiac event while I was in the middle of my sophomore year of high school, and I had cried in my bedroom for 3 days and not been asked how I was doing. I'm listening, I said. There's something in your grandfather's estate that your parents are not aware of, Henry Bradford said. A provision that was structured deliberately to activate under specific conditions. A pause. Conditions that were met when you passed the bar. I stood on the courthouse steps in March air, briefcase in hand, and felt the specific sensation of something very large turning over somewhere underneath the ordinary surface of things. He knew? I said. He knew what he hoped, Bradford said. He asked me to wait and to watch. And when you were admitted to the Nebraska bar, my instructions were to call you. Another pause. There are documents, Anna, and there is a number attached to them that I think you should hear in person. What kind of number? The kind that changes things. The wind moved across the courthouse steps. Somewhere behind me, through the glass doors, my parents were still in that hallway. Tomorrow, Henry Bradford said, 9 a.m. I can come to Omaha. He gave me the address of a coffee shop on Dodge Street. He said the documents would be notarized originals. He said to bring my bar card. Then he hung up. I stood there for a moment with the phone at my side. 12 years ago, my grandfather had looked at me in the living room on Christmas Eve. I was 17. I had just told him I wanted to be a lawyer. My parents were in the kitchen doing the particular performance of not listening, and he had said very quietly, "Good, do it right." I had thought he meant work hard. Maybe he meant more. I will not tell you the number Henry Bradford put in front of me the next morning, in a corner booth of a coffee shop on Dodge Street, over 2 cups of coffee neither of us touched while I read the documents. I won't tell you because it is mine, and because some things that belong to you don't need to be public in order to be real. What I will tell you is what the documents meant. My grandfather had established a trust in 1998, 2 years before I was born. He had named his daughter, my mother, as the primary beneficiary, but he had included a secondary provision, a contingency clause in language so precise that Henry Bradford Bradford told me it had taken 2 additional attorneys to draft it properly. If my mother ever failed in her obligations to a dependent child of hers to the extent that the child was rendered homeless before the age of 21, the trust interest reverted to that child directly, by name, because my grandfather had amended the trust in 2009, 3 years before he died, when I was 17. The amended version added my name. He added you specifically? I said. Henry Bradford, 71 years old, reading glasses, white shirt, the voice of a man who had been keeping this particular secret for 12 years with the patient professionalism of someone who understood exactly what it meant, said, he told me, and I am quoting directly, Diane will do what Diane does, but Anna will find her way. Make sure it's waiting for her. I put my hand flat on the table. The coffee shop was not loud. A machine behind the counter, someone's laptop, the sound of traffic on Dodge Street. My grandfather had known. Not everything. He couldn't have known the garbage bags and the $40 and the specific October Saturday, but he had known my mother the way daughters sometimes fail to know their mothers until it is too late, and he had built a door for me in advance, and he had hired Henry Bradford to stand next to it and wait. Henry Bradford slid one more document across the table. It was a letter, handwritten. My grandfather's handwriting, which I recognized from birthday cards he had sent me until the year he died. Small, careful, slightly left-leaning. Anna, it began, if you're reading this, you did it without them. I always thought you would. There was never anything wrong with you. There was only ever something wrong with the room. Go build better rooms. Grandpa Robert, I put the letter down on the table. I did not cry. I considered it. Then I decided that my grandfather had not written that letter to produce tears. He had written it because he needed me to know the thing he hadn't been alive to say. I picked up my bar card from the table where I had placed it, per Bradford's instructions, and I held it up. Henry Bradford nodded once. Welcome to the other side of this, he said. My mother called me 4 days later, not because she had found out about the trust. Bradford had been categorical that the legal timeline before notification was 30 days. She called because she needed something. The repair orders from Judge Holbrook's ruling had arrived, and the contractor she had called for an estimate had given her a number that was, apparently, significantly larger than she had expected. She wanted me to appeal the ruling. She asked me, her voice polished, careful, the warmest it had been toward me in 12 years, to help her. I listened to her ask. Then I said, I don't represent property owners, Mom. I represent tenants. A silence. We're your family, she said. Same card, different hand. You'll need to call Gerald for the appeal, I said. He knows the file. I hung up gently, not with anger, with the clean finality of a door closing on its own appropriate schedule. 3 weeks later, Bradford's formal notification letter arrived at my parents' address. I know this because he told me he had sent it, and because 2 hours after it was delivered, my father called my cell phone. I watched it ring, watched it stop, watched the voicemail notification appear. I did not listen to the voicemail for 6 days. When I did, it was 43 seconds long and contained approximately 1 sentence of anything that could be called an apology, buried under 3 layers of grievance, a claim that Bradford was misinterpreting the trust documents, and a request to talk about this as a family. I forwarded it to Bradford. He said the documents were not subject to interpretation. He said the timeline was not subject to negotiation. He said to enjoy my week. Claire Oates' apartment was re-inspected on day 28. Doug Ferris, Housing Standards Division, 17 years with Douglas County, signed the re-inspection certificate confirming that all 3 code violations had been remediated and the unit was returned to habitable status. He sent a copy to the court. He sent a copy to me. Maya Oates' follow-up appointment with Dr. Sarah Kwan at Children's Hospital, 8 weeks after the family moved back into the remediated unit, showed improvement in her pulmonary function. Dr. Kwan's notes read, environmental irritant removed, patient's respiratory presentation improving, no further interventions indicated at this time. I printed that report and put it in the file. That one I read twice. The epilogue is this. I still work at Everett & Cho. Patricia Cho made me a junior partner in January. I took 4 tenant cases in the first quarter of this year. I won 3. 1 is still pending. A Section 8 habitability dispute that is going to trial in May, and that I am going to win because the landlord's maintenance records have a gap in them that I can drive a bus through. I have not had dinner with my parents. I have spoken to my father once since the Bradford letter, a short call in February in which he said very little and I said less. I do not know what, if anything, will eventually be repaired there. I hold the question without urgency. Some things need time. Some things need work from both sides. And some things simply are what they are, and you name them accurately and continue. My brother, Derek, texted me in April. He said he had heard from our mother and that he was sorry he had been in the middle of everything growing up, and that he thought I had turned out really well. I thanked him. We are figuring out what, if anything, we are to each other now. That is its own slow work. My grandfather's letter is in a frame on the wall of my office on Farnham Street. There was never anything wrong with you. There was only ever something wrong with the room. I look at it sometimes when a case is hard, when I am preparing for a trial, and the file is complicated, and the opposing counsel has more resources, and the judge is unpredictable. I look at it and I locate the place inside me where everything goes quiet and operational. Then I go back to work, because that is what I do. That is what I have always done. I build, quietly, precisely, in rooms where laughter can't pass for judgment, and I win.